Benzo soto samaya mano palaya. Benzo soto teno patista drito mabawa suto kaya mabawa supo kaya mabawa no rato mabawa sarwa site maprayasa sarwa karma susame sitam. My journey is unique, as I think you know. Being someone who, had to go through my own particular ordeal of having, a really sick father, being the only child, and experiencing intense trauma at his hands, and then basically going into my own mind, because that was the only thing I figured out that in any way, helped with the trauma, just basically assuming the role of the witness to what was happening, because it was just so painful. And then after doing that for a couple of years, really, really intensively, this is in Berkeley in the early 80s, so like 35 years ago, having a full-blown spiritual awakening in which I was realizing, oh my God, we're having a mass shared dream. And I was so enthusiastic that I got myself thrown in mental hospitals. And that seemed to be this incredible skill I had at that point, this propensity to get myself thrown in mental hospitals. And that was just, incredibly traumatic in a certain way, but it was only like a number of years after that I would look back and I was realizing, oh, that was actually part of the shamanic initiatory experience. That was the descent into Hades, so to speak, which was helpful to be able to recontextualize it. But basically, then I had the trauma from my abusive father overlaid with the trauma from psychiatry, being diagnosed and medicated for a little bit and pathologized, and my whole family bought into the diagnosis, and it was like I was living a nightmare, but meanwhile I was having this spiritual awakening. And so that kind of put me on my own trajectory that was a little bit different than the consensus reality path. And I've been fortunate to be able to develop my own body of work and to connect with my creativity and my own voice. And that's just something that, every day that's my whole day is focused around that. If I don't, if I'm not connecting in that way, then I basically don't feel, I can feel not well or sick or something, So it's really, the thing I'm saying is that it's crucial for me to just continually be accessing and creatively expressing what I'm experiencing, and that's the very thing that's healing me. Because I see the extent that I'm not creatively expressing constructively in a productive way, that I just act out self-destructively in all these subtle or not so subtle ways. Because I had everybody in my world, way back when in the early 80s was reflecting back to me. I mean, my parents, my friends, the psychiatrists, everybody I know was giving me a reflection of, oh, you're mentally ill, you have this chemical imbalance, you're gonna need to be on medication for the rest of your life. And I'm thinking in my head, wow, they're just stupid. They just have no, seriously. Because what saved me was that it was so obvious from inside my own head that I was having a spiritual awakening. So I quickly figured out, oh, I should just stop talking about what I'm experiencing. And I had to sort of play a certain role to be able to navigate through, such that I could extricate myself from the whole scene. But a lot of people aren't so lucky, and they just start taking on other people's idea of who they are, i.e., oh, you're sick, you're mentally ill, you're chemically imbalanced, you're bipolar, whatever. And then like a self-fulfilling prophecy, they just live it out, and that's tragic. Well, I think it's important to represent both parts of the process. The world was telling me I was crazy, and I was thinking, wow, they're really stupid. Because so often just one is represented, but both were,
Right.
reciprocally co-arising.
Yeah.
And it couldn't have been, I don't even take credit for it. It just couldn't have been more obvious to me. It was it couldn't have been. It was just it was made crystal clear to me that I was, having a spiritual awakening. And it was confusing that other people didn't see it or were pathologizing it, but not even ever for a second did I take on their version. It's funny, I was just talking to somebody the other day, and I was telling them, because I don't really talk much about the experiences, because they're just not the sort of thing you talk about, it's pretty obvious. But I was just there was one of them I was sharing, and he was really switched on. He was going, "Wow, your entire work was encoded in that experience," and that was, and I was appreciating him saying that because yeah, exactly. It was, that was like almost like the seed of what I, created my whole life around was what was being shown to me in these experiences. I mean, it's the one of the many, really mystical, spiritual, out there experiences. It's the one that I've kind of gotten permission from my own inner guidance to talk about. And basically, what happened, I was in such deep pain, from my trauma and was just doing Vipassana for like hours and hours and hours a day for a couple of years. And one day, a lightning bolt ignited in my brain just for a moment. It was like getting hit by a bolt of lightning, but it was inside of my mind. And then, I went into such an extreme, altered, enthusiastic state where I was realizing this was a dream. But that basically happened within the next 24 hours. And I was in the Bay Area, and a friend was visiting from New York, and I was in my mid 20s, and he's a very straight, consensus reality person, and here, it's like I've had like a total personality change. I'm just super, excited about what I'm realizing, and so basically, the police got called in, and ambulance got called in, and I got shipped over to Highland Hospital in Oakland, and this is in May 1981, and they bring me it's at nighttime, they bring me into the psych ward, into the lounge where the psychiatric patients are, and I immediately see a woman, and she's blind. And she's an older woman, she's older than me, and at that point, I was 24. And I just, without even thinking, I just walk up to her, and her eyes are opaque, they're blind person's eyes, really obvious. And I just start, almost like I was given a script, I just start saying the words, all you have to do to see is open your eyes and look. And I keep on repeating those words and getting closer to her and just looking in her eyes. The whole thing took under a minute, and she regained her sight. And then, as if on cue, that moment they come and they take me and they strap me up on a bed for the night. And they give me some sort of drugs, which I'm assuming were like antipsychotics. So just to complete the story, the next morning they unstrap me and they put me in a room, sitting at a table, and the only other person in the room is this ex-blind woman, and she's just smiling ear to ear, looking at me, and she's not saying a word. And then all of a sudden, my heart chakra just blossomed, and then I understood. Oh, I get it. Her eyes, from the physical point of view, were totally fine, but psychologically, she wasn't letting herself look. And that was, in a way, causing this hysterical blindness. And somehow, the night before, I sort of saw that. And she was at the point in her process of being, she was ready to heal. And I got sent by central casting. I was the person who was playing the role to say these lines that she needed to hear to help her to, like, heal her blindness. And also, she was the blind part of me. So it was a reciprocal dreaming. And then she said to me, so I had this realization. Then she says to me, she asked me, aren't you going to answer the phone call from, and she mentions my father's name. And then within like seconds, the nurse comes in the room and says, Paul, your father's on the phone, because my parents had just found out that I had a psychotic break and was like hospitalized. So that was the first of the, of many, many. I mean, that wasn't any sort of that was just a highly improbable. That was an auspicious coincidence, because that, it obviously can happen. It's very unlikely that'll happen, but it was a really synchronistic, auspicious coincidence of factors. She was ready to heal. I happened to be there and was tuned in whatever way I was. But why that's the seed of my work is that, oh yeah, we were dreaming together. We were co-dreaming. And I was just available for getting dreamed up to pick up whatever role was needed in the field. And in essence, that's a way of describing my work in the groups that you're in, or with the dreaming, with people that I do, is that, yeah, when you really like tune in to yourself and to the field and the other person, we're always casting each other in roles. We're always picking up roles in each other's process if they're like not fully associated with, if somebody's disassociated with their anger, we might be getting angry for them. And, so that's always happening. But when you begin to add awareness to that and to to play that out in a certain way, it can really help to unfold people's processes. And so that's what I mean when I say the work I do now is really sort of in seed, and it was like encoded in, like, almost like a hologram. One little piece of a hologram has the whole hologram encoded in each fragment. It was almost like in that one little story I just told you, the entire body of work that I've spent 35 years creating was right there encoded in that interaction with that blind woman. And also that's something, even with all these books I'm writing or whatever, in essence, my message is just open your eyes and look. And it's really a message to me, because they say you teach what you need to learn, and God, do I need to learn that? Right. Or I'm continually like relearning it again and again. So we all have blind spots. That's just the nature of things. And part of the nature of a blind spot is that you can't see your own blind spot. So to have other people who can actually hold up mirrors and reflect back your blind spot, and then if you actually, are able to cultivate the capability of considering when you receive reflection, like other people might be totally tripping and might be just projecting their own shadow, or they might be seeing your blind spot. And if they are, that's a gift. And if you're able to like actually, to assume their perspective and to check out if, oh, maybe they're actually seeing something, what an opportunity for you to actually to make whatever was unconscious conscious. Yeah, so I'm aware that a lot of spiritual people, I mean, the main spiritual bookstore in the town that we both live in, they won't even carry my new book because it has the word evil in the title or something. I mean, God only knows what their thinking is. But so on the one hand, there's a lot of like these well-intentioned, these spiritual people, who are good people who just are so edged out by the word evil. And but I feel like that it's profoundly important to shed light on what is that about. I mean, just take a look around of what's playing out in our world, and clearly, you see, it's like really important to find the right words for describing our experience. And there's a certain aspect of our experience, just as human beings, that there's no better word than evil, and the destructiveness that is one of its major qualities. There's just not a better word than evil to describe what we're playing out. And I'm not talking metaphysically or theologically. I'm just talking in the psyche, just from the psychological point of view. And so yeah, my whole work is trying to basically shed light on the darkness, because if you don't, then the darkness gets in the driver's seat, and it's like driving you, and then we compulsively just act out in destructive and self and or other destructive ways, and so I wrote a whole book about about Wetiko, which is the native term for evil, and I can go on and on forever about that. But the idea is that it's profoundly important to become conscious, because the way evil works is that if I don't want to look at that, I'm going to avoid it, I'm going to pretend it's not there. Well, guess what? Then you're feeding it by your avoidance of that. If you become too fascinated with it, well, then you're feeding it that way too. But if you see how it operates, and it operates through the blind spots of the unconscious, it operates in the psyche, then once you see that, then you can choose as a sovereign being, oh, okay, now I see you, but I don't want to give my attention anymore. I want to actually invest my attention in creating the world I want to live in. That's an empowered state. That's very different than avoiding it or becoming overly fascinated by it, Because when you were first asking me the question, you said, oh, you were taught that desire is evil or whatever. And I noticed I was kind of like, almost like shocked. I was like, really? Oh, wow. Because that's not something that I really entertain very often. Because from my point of view, yeah, I'm a Buddhist, so I know like desire has its shadow side. It can really be one of the ways of that we enact evil. But the way I see it is that that's not anything implicitly that's negative to have desire. It all depends, what do we do with those desires? Do we indulge them? they can easily become habitual patterns, and they can lead to addictive behaviors. That's not good. But oftentimes in the desire, in the seat of the desire, is our true nature. Like we have desire to, oh, when I was younger, I had a desire to do exactly what I'm doing now, to just be creatively expressing myself as an artist in a way that's actually healing me and healing other people. And wow, that's a desire that was like a vision, and there was a deep part of me, you could say my soul, that was desiring to incarnate that. That's not evil. That's actually the very thing that's helped me, that's healed me. Say in Buddhism, say if I became like enlightened, right, and then I die, well, if I'm like, this fully enlightened being, I could very easily make the choice, oh, I'm going to come back into the third dimensional world, into samsara, to like actually help other people who are still caught in the illusion. And that's not, oh, incarnating, based on like these desires that are like negative. That's like, incarnating based on like a really sublime desire.
Right.
So I think it's important to be accurate with language, because the thing with desire, it has a bad rap in a
Totally.
lot of traditions. And there's a good reason for that, because when we indulge, when we become attached, when we become possessed, by our desires, then we just can easily become an automaton that's just compulsively, acting out something. We're just an instrument for something that's not ourselves to be coming through, that isn't helpful to either us or other people. That's very different than, when we're incarnating the real primordial sort of the desire of our true nature. If I'm acting something out and I feel like sort of compulsive, like there's no choice involved, that can be like a red flag of, oh wow, that's probably a desire that where I'm actually, feeding my unhealthy part, where, I'm just maybe I'm recreating my trauma, like reenacting my abuse. I don't feel that choice. That's very different than, oh yeah, I can either, I have an impulse to do something. Oh yeah, I feel spacious, I'm not identified with it, I'm not attached to it, I can choose. Oh, is it what I want to create? What are going to be the consequences? Oh, I can choose that or not, you know. But it also gets even trickier than that, because sometimes when we're enacting what seems to be the compulsive stuff, then it seems to be bad, and then we feel like, I think about myself, like, with like food, sometimes I can overeat, and then I feel like, fucked up, or like, oh God, my creativity is shut down, I've enacted my abuse, how did that happen again, why did I do that? And that all seems bad. But maybe from another point of view, maybe the deeper process is, no, that's what needs to happen. You need to like play this out again and again. There's maybe some sort of like lesson or blessing in recreating your abuse, almost, to gain enough momentum or critical mass to up level. I mean, who knows? So all that I'm saying, I'm cautioning all of us to just, in an arrogant way, to have judgment or to know what's good and bad, because it's not that black or white. And so, like just all the time, I mean, I feel this deep place of, whatever, pain or trauma or wounding. And when I do my practice, or how come I do my practice as often as I do, is it helps me, instead of if I identify with that pain, then I'm in trouble, because then, oh wow, then I feel really caught, and then it becomes like an infinite feedback loop where I'm in the whole samsaric cyclic existence of the very way I'm trying to heal my pain is creating the pain I'm trying to heal from, and it just self-generates.
Right.
And I just feel totally fucked up at that point, but when I really connect with my practice, I all of a sudden, more and more, I'm able to connect with my heart, and they call it bodhicitta, the precious bodhicitta, the heart of awakening, and it's basically just a good heart, but you're basically, for me in my practice, I'm like, oh, what about if I just embrace my experience in this moment? And even if I'm experiencing pain, my my sort of like the egoic response is to judge the pain and resist it and try to resolve it, which, just like I was describing, just perpetuates it. But what if I'm feeling pain at this moment? What if I'm actually, if I'm able to frame it that, oh wow, this is like what's being presented to me, and what if I just actually feel it and experience it and don't contract against it, or if I do contract against it, to embrace that I'm contracting against it, and just to really be spacious with it, with the imagination that, wow, what about if I'm doing this and it's actually me doing this right now by being with my, if I'm experiencing pain, being with my pain, it's actually helping other beings. Well, then if I'm imagining that, well, then it makes me even more able to embrace, because, oh, well, if I'm feeling pain, instead of me like overlaying that it's a bad thing, that's like a problem, what about if this is the form of the blessing of the universe right now? And if I can just open up to that and really feel that what if no one else would ever have to feel this negative state if I fully feel it? If I am framing my experience in that way, then I'm more and more like just opening up to being with my experience. And then it can actually, even though the pain might still be there, it can become more ecstatic and a lot not as problematic. And then my heart more and more is opening, and I feel more in my body. And and then I'm feeling more love and compassion for other people, including for myself in my situation. Of, if I'm feeling in pain, oh, I can actually, what a radical idea, feel compassion for myself. So that's kind of why I do what I do as far as my Buddhist practice. And if I hadn't found that, I don't know what I would have done, because it was just overwhelming. I mean, the abuse, the particular emotional psychological, I mean, I just wrote a book about it, as you know, that I went through. I mean, it could have killed me. It, in a literal way, it literally drove me crazy. I mean, I'm not just somebody who was having a spiritual awakening who was misdiagnosed as being crazy. No, once I had my spiritual awakening and I got misdiagnosed, that contributed to like actually, pushing me over the edge and drove me crazy. And, so I joke with people that, yeah, the only certification I have is that I'm certifiably out of my mind, which I'm happy to be, out of my cognitive conceptualizing mind, or I'm not caught by it in the way that I was, that most people are, and yeah, so I'm just really so appreciative that I was able to connect with the Dharma, with the teachings of the Buddha. It doesn't have to be the Buddha; it could be any spiritual tradition. Just if I hadn't connected in that way, I shiver to think where I would be right now. Really. And so here I am in like some sort of role of, I don't even know what, healer or teacher or writer or artist or a shaman or this or that. People call me a lot of different things, and you know, I just think of myself more as just a creative person. But so many people have an image that when somebody's in this role, they need to be all together and all healed and all enlightened. And so I guess given this, whatever, I have like a soapbox right now. I just want to say, yeah, it's like, I think really it's profoundly healing for me, and hopefully inspiring for others. I'm still a work in progress. I'm still like, dealing with my own stuff every day and finding ways to navigate through my own ordeal. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm fully enlightened, like we're all fully enlightened. And another part of me is totally not, because I'm dealing with my own stuff, and like I've been saying. And so I'm hoping that it's going to be inspiring for people to see someone like me, who's not just like all like a package, who's wrapped in a bow and all slick and smooth and together. So the idea being is like, no, we're all in a work in process, and we all have our stuff, but it can be carried in a way that can even more empower us in our roles as teachers or healers, instead of taking away from that role. Sonam di damche zikbane top nyenye pedranam pamche te kegana chi balon trupai sidbe zole dro wara sho.